As promised, back again with another video here on this Tuesday in St. Louis. This is the Bernie Miklasz Show. I am Bernie. I think you know that already. And it's good to have you back with us. Thank you for your support. Please subscribe if you haven't. And continue to stop by and check it out. Hit the like button. Feel free to leave your comments. So, I did a video earlier on Mason Wynn not getting any recognition whatsoever, any real consideration for the National League Rookie of the Year award. So you can go find that one now here on the YouTube channel. Second one, as pledged, talking about Robert Thomas. Some good news for the Blues, and let's face it, it's been very much kind of depressing lately. You know, there just hasn't been much good to talk about. A lot of discouraging results, a lot of downer type of trends, lack of scoring, lack of competitiveness at times, injuries, it's just on and on and on and on. So the Blues have had a hard time gaining traction, keeping any kind of traction. We'll get into the overview in a minute, but they need something positive to happen. They need a good development, an encouraging, uplifting development, and I think they're getting that tonight at Enterprise Center, talking about Tuesday night when the Minnesota Wild come in, and the Blues will have Robert Thomas back in the lineup. This is a big deal. I think we all appreciated Robert Thomas and understood how much he has grown as a player, how much he has matured, how important he is to the franchise. I do think, however, I'm sure most of you would agree with me, that his value to the Blues was underlined, was emphasized by how poorly they did without him when he missed 11 games with an ankle injury. And he's actually made it back quicker than originally anticipated, or at least the timetable, and that's really good too. So not only is he coming back, he's coming back sooner than expected. So let's talk about this. In the 11 games that the Blues played with Thomas out of the lineup with that bad ankle, the Blues were 3-7-1, and that was since October the 26th. That was the worst points percentage, 318 in the National Hockey League. So if you're going from 1 to 32 in the league rankings, they were number 32 without Robert Thomas. And I know it's not a one-man team, man. I know that there's other guys that haven't played as well as they should. I know the Blues have missed some other people with injuries, especially the young, impressive defenseman, Philip Broberg. So it's been a tough go for the Blues. We've seen a lack of effort. We've seen players berate themselves after games. Drew Bannister, the coach, has expressed his displeasure with some of the intensity. Some of it's been confusing, like the Blues. They had that one game where they had a lead. Was this against Boston? They had a lead, and then they kind of laid back and blew the lead in the third corner. They weren't aggressive enough. They didn't get on their front foot, as they would say in soccer, and really press the action. They played it too safe. And my frustration with that, when they blew a 2-0 lead in the third period, because they were passive, basically, at least in terms of attacking. The problem I had with that is like, well, what you do have a timeout, right? Coach, you do have a timeout. Because after the game, the coach talked about how they laid back too much, how they weren't aggressive enough about attacking and trying to score more and, keeping the Bruins honest, so to speak. They kind of collapsed in a shell. The coach said it. Braden Shen said it. Justin Falk said it. A bunch of them said it. And it's like, well, wait a minute. If you know all this is happening and you feel really strongly about it because you really talked plainly and clearly and loudly about it after the game, well, why didn't anyone intervene in the third period when this was developing? Why do you let 20 minutes go by without, kind of doing something about it if you're aware of it? So the Blues at times have been befuddling. And that's true with Robert Thomas or without Robert Thomas, But But let's talk about what he's meant to the team. And once again, he missed 11 games. During those 11 games, they had the worst points percentage in the league, 3-7-1. Also, the offense just kind of disintegrated. It was just brutal. Without Thomas, with him gone for the last 11 games, they averaged just over 2 goals per game. In this 11-game stretch, the Blues scored 3 goals or fewer 10 times, 2 goals or fewer 7 times, and exactly 1 goal in 4 of their contests. And with all due respect to Thomas, because we're going to talk about his value, and there's one aspect that they really missed. I'll get to that here in a minute, and this won't be a overly long video. We know Thomas is good. He's their best playmaker. He's the best center. We wonderful passer. We know all that. But it's still kind of preposterous that they would have such a severe drought just because he's out of the lineup, where they would be unable to function, at least creating and banking goals, that it would be so bad that your offense is like choked off. And again, I know they had other players injured too. Don't get me wrong. But he'll be back tonight, and I would expect that to be picking up. It better pick up, even though this has been a lengthy problem, even when Thomas has been in there. Again, I'm going to get to this in a minute. With Thomas missing, the Blues were outscored by 19 goals, 44-23. That 34% goal share was the worst by a team in the NHL since October 26, with no Robert Thomas. With no Robert Thomas, the Blues averaged only 1.99 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, 2.13 goals per 60 minutes at even strength, and a little, like I mentioned earlier, little over 2 goals per 60 minutes at all strengths. So it's just ridiculous that the offense just goes dry like that, even with Thomas out. We know it makes a difference. We know that he's valuable. He's a plus in every zone, right? And I made some notes on this, and I think some of this stuff's really good as far as understanding how good Thomas is in most areas, if not all areas. And no one's saying he's Gretzky, right? No one's saying he's Mario Lemieux. No one's saying that. But on this team, he's a very important player. He's a plus in every zone. He's a strength on the special teams, and he's really an ace at winning faceoffs. And I really thought that was the thing they really, really, really missed without him in there. Before his injury, the Blues were winning about 51% of the playoffs. Without Thomas in the lineup, they were winning between 44 and 45% of the faceoffs. That's a pretty big drop, right? And here's why. Before going down, he had an exceptional face-off success rate, 62.6%, second best in the NHL. That speaks for itself, but let's break it down a little more, shall we? Because this talks about his importance in all 3 zones. You're in the defensive zone, you want to win that face-off. You're in the offensive zone, you want to win that face-off and take control, generate some offense in the other team's end. Neutral zone, very important to win the face-off because it often dictates which way the action's going to go. They're going to be coming at your goal if you lose it. You got a chance to go to their goal if you win it. Not all the time. It's not absolute. There's bad passes and stuff. But you want to win as many face-offs as possible. I mean, you talk about stating the obvious. So here's this illustrates, I think, conclusively just how damn good Robert Thomas is at winning face-offs. This season, he's won just under 62% of the face-offs in the offensive end. 12th best among centers. Now, when you think about how many centermen play in the NHL, dozens. He was the 12th best winning offensive draws. In the neutral zone, in the defensive zone, 60.5% success rate on faceoffs. That was 16th best among all centers. And again, dozens and dozens and dozens of centers. So when you're in the top 20, that's damn good. That's outstanding. And what about neutral zone faceoffs? This season, Robert Thomas, his success rate 66%, number one in the league, the very best in the league. So as I repeat what I said at the top of this, he had the second best overall faceoff percentage in the league this year as far as winning them. And when you break it down by zone, to me, it becomes even more impressive because there's very little difference about how good he is at winning draws, no matter where that faceoff is going to be. So his ability to win those faceoffs in all three zones is important because it's him coming back to win more faceoffs at that same type of level can only, I think, help the Blues reestablish some puck control and just kind of have more of an edge or at least more competitive in the territorial battle, right? And they've been chasing the game a lot. Not every game, but they've been chasing the game a lot. And from an overview standpoint, though, let me talk about this because this applies to the Blues, whether Thomas is in there or not. These are pretty glaring numbers, if you ask me. Since the start of last season, 23-24 season, the Blues are 29th among the 32 teams in goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. They are 28th in goals per 60 minutes at even strength, and they are 28th in goals per 60 minutes at all strengths. So you're talking about 32, 31, 30, 29, 28. You're talking about a bottom five offense since the start of last season. And I know the goaltenders, for the most part, have played very, very well. I know there's some parts about their defensive play this season have been better. But man, when you can't score better than a bottom five level now into your second season, being way down there like that, it explains a lot about where the Blues are or maybe where they're not. And they're having a heck of a time, as in a bad time, in terms of getting the share of goals scored, whether it's 5-on-5, even strength, all strength, special teams, certainly. Their goal share just continues to drop and drop and drop. And it's been doing that since the start of last season. I mean, this is really a problem because you can't expect Bennington and Hofer to play like classic form Ken Dryden every night, right? It's just not realistic or fair. Those two guys over the last two seasons, those two goaltenders have actually stolen quite a few games for the Blues, or they've kept the Blues in a game, kept it within a goal on nights where they've gotten terribly outshot and terribly outplayed. Those guys have given them a chance to come back and get a point, even steal a game. So it's been too much to put on them. And that's what happens when you have a bottom five offense over the start of last season and into this season, if you add it together. So this is among the reasons why it's going to be great to see Thomas back in the middle of everything. Starting tonight, Tuesday, against the Minnesota Wild, the Blues can maybe get back on track, get a morale boost, start feeling better about themselves, be more inspired, or just get kind of fully motivated again. There are guys coming back, and Robert Thomas is really, really important. The thing about it is, though, and I want to end on a somewhat positive note here, other than the fact that he's coming back. The Blues still have plenty of time to improve as a team, but just improve also in the standings. Because even though their 8-10-1 record overall this season translates into the 25th best points percentage in the league, that's bad. We know that's really bad. But the Western Conference is kind of waiting for them to catch up. They've left an opening. It's like, well, come on. You know, a lot of us are mediocre too. A lot of us haven't found our stride yet. Come on, Blues, catch us. You're not that far behind. And it's true. The Blues are fortunate considering everything that's gone wrong. And the fact that they're coming off that 3-7-1 stretch where they couldn't score goals. and now they're getting their guy RT back. I think they're fortunate because even though they only have 17 points on the season, and you're like, well, that's not good. No, it's not. That's tied for 11th in the Western Conference. But despite the scoring famine and the injuries and the poor play and the lack of motivation and yada, 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 not having Broberg, and that was a big loss. The Blues are only 3 points out of a wild card spot in the West as they go into tonight's game. So when you put it in that perspective, a lot of damage, a lot of uneven play, poor play, mediocre play, not having their best offensive guy, their best forward, their best center, their best faceoff guy. I think the fact that they're 3 points out right now, we can give thanks for that. I know Thanksgiving is next week, but we can give thanks for the fact that the Blues are only 3 points out of a wild card spot in the Western Conference. But they got to start playing better, and they got to start scoring more goals. That'll do it for today. I appreciate you all very much. I'm going to be trying to mix in more Blues hockey, and going to be primarily a Cardinals channel because that's just where the interest is, and your numbers tell me that in terms of views, and I love it. All right, I'll shut up now. You all be good. Have a good rest of this Tuesday, and let's see if the Blues can get 2 points and get a lift from Robert Thomas tonight at Enterprise Center. Thank you very much.